Broadcasting live, this is the Handicappers Report, brought to you by the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany, and CapitalOTBBet.com, the premier online wagering site in New York State. CapitalOTBBet.com. Sign up today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Handicappers Report alongside Seth Merrow. I am Anthony Mormino, and I knew if I did this long enough, there'd be a new coach at Syracuse before I was done at Capital Off-Track Betting.
Oh, that was...
It took a long time.
That was a rough end to the season.
Well, how about the beginning? Bryant, Colgan, like this was... But what a weird end. I mean, it should not have ended this way. But I only bring it up because Seth is a proud Syracuse graduate, and... you know, you have to go back to the bicentennial, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I should say pre-bicentennial, when there was a different...
47 years.
Yeah. How about the years he's been on campus?
What, 61?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there'll never be anything like it again. And I've said this before. I mean, obviously Seth is a huge SEO, and I have had the pleasure of being in his company socially many times. I played golf with him. He's one of my favorite people. I've said this to you before. He's one of my favorite people.
Everybody says
when I
that,
watch these interviews, I'm like, that's not the guy. I don't know why he goes off the rails.
I can't figure it out.
But in private, he's almost demure. I mean, he's a tall gentleman. He's so nice. His children are wonderful. I mean, he is a great guy, and yet, if all you ever saw were his post-game interviews, you'd be like, he's kind of a creep.
That's a great word. That's what it comes out. I mean, somebody asks a perfectly logical question, and he's off the rails.
He's all rough, but long time for Seth's University.
That was, I thought they were going to pull it out and get to the next round.
If you missed it when he played Wake Forest, kid hit a 3 at the buzzer.
You know, the last play has to be, whatever you do, drive to the basket, make the refs make a call. It's not a fadeaway. But I will say, on Twitter, folks are like, that's what they drew up in the huddle? And it's like, that's not what they drew up. The fadeaway from Gerard was not what they drew up. And he then said in the press conference it was going to be a high-low. We couldn't get it low. But you have to emphasize, I don't care what if you can't pass. You're driving. You're going to make them make a call. You're not going to take a fadeaway 3. And it was just a rough way to go out. And then the ambiguous, are you retiring, not retiring?
I gave my speech the other day. Well, we didn't say the verb. Subject, predicate, object. I'm retiring.
And then 2 hours later, the press release comes out. It was just totally awkward. I will say they had the introduction to Adrian Autry yesterday. You can catch that on YouTube, and Boeheim was there and was very gracious. So
it was funny that the press release from the school did not have a quote for him. I mean, you know this, and I will say this. I was talking to somebody about this. I said, listen, I know the rule of thumb is at this point in their life you get to go out on your own terms, but it seemed like Coach didn't want to leave, and the university's like, Jim, I can't have an 80-year-old guy on the sideline. I mean, it's hard to relate to the 18-year-old kid. I said, etc. He doesn't know if you're going to be there for 4 years. I mean, he's pushing 80, folks. I mean, he's a good 80, but he got to coach his sons, which were nice. They're always very nice.
Yeah,
his daughter was they would win the state championship by like 35 points.
The daughter was at the press conference yesterday.
Was she?
They, obviously thanked the family, choked up a little bit thanking the wife, but thanked the 2 sons, his first daughter, and then said, and of course Sissy, and he said, she's here today. She's the only one in the family that's won 3 championships. So.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, it was a
long time. I mean,
and they had a succession plan in place years ago with Mike Hopkins.
I watched him coach because he's in the Pac-12. He's at Washington.
He was kind of like, okay, I'm out. They're offering me the Washington job. I'm out. And then he hung around, and then it was like, okay, coach your kids. But he said yesterday at the press conference, he said a couple of times over the past couple of weeks, I had this recruiting class. I thought it was going to be a good year. We talked it over with the people up the ladder at Syracuse, and everybody said, yeah, I should coach one more. And so, yeah. We'll see.
I mean,
it's a new era.
I mean, you have to put this in perspective. I mean, the gentleman before him left Syracuse to take the job at Tulane. Danforth, Ray Danforth, I think it was.
Roy.
Gerald Ford was president. Just to give you some context, but big day as what is one of the great gifts of this time of year in horse racing is that this rotation of tracks, and they get their big day. Well, it's Tampa's turn at the Trough, their biggest day. Seth will have them after I do the Big A. So, it's a great day of racing. And then, Oaklawn will take their start with their shot. And I've said this before, and I must have been sitting in with you doing Racing Across America years ago, and Jim Byers was our guest. And I love Jim Byers. I mean, he was at Hollywood Park during Hollywood Park's super heyday during my early youth. And I mean, we just talked about races. And I always liked his voice. And what he did was he left Hollywood Park for brand spanking new at the time, I think September 1st, 1988, Remington Park. And I think as it turns out, I think Jim Byers is a Midwest guy. And then he called hockey and everything. But he's at Oaklawn Park now. So big day of racing today.
Yeah, folks haven't been tuned into the news. Vic Stauffer out. He
also called races at Hollywood Park.
Wasn't there last weekend, and I looked all over, and we were talking before we went on, and I think it's an indictment of where horse racing now stands in the media, and even an indictment on horse racing media, that it took a week for anybody to write anything about Vic Stauffer being out at Oaklawn, and then he came on, and it's over a tweet. You can go to Arkansas Times. They've had an article yesterday that showed the tweet and showed Vic's response, and I'm amazed that he was fired over. I think it was kind of innocuous. It was maybe a questionable topic. I don't know, but it seems I'm wondering if there's more to the story.
It's hard to imagine that this would be the first offense that would get you fired. Doesn't seem to be that type of situation.
I said,
you had a glittering
you get
record.
Called into the principal's office.
Yeah, you'd be like,
maybe it was the 20th time. It seems like there's more to the story. But Vic Stauffer out. Jim Byers is they're saying on an interim basis. They'll decide at the end of the season. He's what the regular caller a Lone Star.
Right. So they don't overlap. Well, they might actually, because now Oaklawn goes to early May. But it wouldn't overlap by a lot of days. I mean, heck, Frank Miramati couldn't make the beginning of Monmouth, and Jason, sat in. So it's all fixable if Jim. I like him a lot. So I've always felt that. I've always presumed that Jim takes the jobs he wants. I think he's an excellent race caller. So I always figured he has the life schedule he wants. I mean, that's just a guess on my part. But
they've got a great stake down there today too. Clairiere comes back in the Azalea.
Yeah, it's that's a great series they have. That it ends up with the Apple Blossom, which is annually one of the 4 or 5 biggest older filly or mare races. And she's an interesting horse because I was never on her bandwagon. It seemed to get on the bandwagon at the right time, and she ran big, I thought, in the Breeders' Cup. And we'll see what this year takes. But it's been like the band hasn't been together for 3 weeks.
That's right.
The wife had the terrible accident. Awful. It's indescribable how bad it was. I can't believe she actually went on vacation. But what happened was she was running. My wife is a half marathoner, for those who haven't followed the 22 years. Saga is not the right word because it's enjoyable, but my wife's a good runner, and her foot got caught in an uneven sidewalk, and it wouldn't release. So she went head first into the sidewalk. Thank goodness she was not running alone. But, it was like, she still has, it's not great, let's say. I was actually, she's headaches and things like that. It's pretty bad. I was like, I went there, I was like, you went running. Why am I in the emergency room? And she explained it. I felt so awful.
Well, for folks who weren't tuned in 3 weeks ago, you got the alert on your phone, and you were headed out on vacation the next day.
I was like, she's like, I knew she went running, which she has done many mornings. We were dating for 4 months, and she didn't know what I did. Like I said, I told you what I do on Saturday. In those days, I used to do Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m. And I'm like, her family comes in and is like, we see him in our living room all the time. She's like, what is it you do? I said, I told you. So she's okay, but not 100% okay. We went on vacation. It was wonderful and those things. But I'm like, Jesus, Denise.
Hey, still have a little color.
It was. I was telling Dan, our director, it was great. It was fantastic. But No casinos there.
Oh, wow.
Broke 2 young men's hearts. But obviously in this day and age, it's, racing is so great now compared to delayed calls in OTV parlors with no video that I grew up with. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're plugged in, you can watch racing.
Remember, speaking of that, remember the old 900 number, right? When
Absolutely.
You got the stretch
run. Listen, that was into the 90s.
Wow,
That was into the 90s. So
I'd forgotten all about that till you mentioned the delay.
I had a very financial opinion on the ballerina about 1992. And I called that number to see. I had to be someplace else, but I needed to know, and it went the right way. All right, so I have the Big A today. Seth will have Tampa. Ren Carruthers will be on Racing Across America at the top of the hour as she is in tow in Oldsmar, Florida. So
also going to have Kevin Kirstein from Churchill because there's
the future
pool. There's the Derby and the Oaks. There's also a Derby Oaks double future bet. Oaks.
How about this?
Derby, I probably should.
And I love him, so I'm clearly not taking a shot at him. And I talked about the time. What is it? Hoosier Philly?
Yeah.
I didn't get the hubbub as a function of the buyers. She had never run a strong buyer. Forget a glittering one. And I know it didn't go perfect, but I'm like, she's never run fast.
But it was on Tommy Amos. He was so enthusiastic.
He was.
About
I
the horse.
agree.
He kind of trust.
I agree, but I was like, wasn't 81 like her top buy? I was like shocked. So we'll see how that goes on. But let us. Anything else? It's been 3 weeks, but hopefully, forget what today is. Remember, set your clocks ahead tonight. But spring is on its way. I know there's some snow out there, but nothing like last week when we didn't do the show. So I'm ready. I think I think it's a very intriguing card. I know it's Aqueduct. I know we have shorter fields and everything. But Seth, as I went through this, I was like, I'm intrigued by this card.
Yeah, fun action all across the country, including in Vegas with the National Handicapping Championship underway. And I will say, at the leaderboard after yesterday, you've probably seen him on with me in Saratoga the last couple of years, our friend A.J. Benton, who lives over in Massachusetts but spends a week in Saratoga every year. We met him out at the NHC a few years ago when we were out there. And he said, hey, I'm in Saratoga. And we said, come on the show.
You've been to the NHC too?
We covered it a couple of years.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's
we're going
nice.
back maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We were
you
out there.
You got the Florida Derby on your horizon?
Yeah, we're headed to the Florida Derby in a couple. So hopefully I'll get a little color myself.
Yes.
But AJ's sitting number 2. And I think Kevin Cox was at about 24, I want to say.
Kevin's been lighting up
in
for
a field of 700
TV.
plus. Certainly that's
no joke.
That's a great result. So again, after day one, it's kind of fun out there. And so they're jumping in on a good Saturday of action across the country. Be fun to see what those guys do. But the opener at Aqueduct today, maiden specials, going 3/4 of a mile. Your thoughts on the opener?
And quickly on yesterday, Manny Franco sweeps the first 4, wins 5 of the day, but Rob Atras' second 4-day win. And I've said that, this bar graph that I've created, it's a battle between Rudy and Rob now, who is the most condensed, wins their races in blocks, and then has a period where they don't win. I mean, 4 for Rob Atras, and including the late pick 3. 237, talked about races here. Now, this one intrigues me for 2 reasons. One is global image for Brad Cox and Robert LaPenta, the familiar burgundy silks with the gold epaulets, right? First-time starter who's 9-5 is an offspring of Liam's map. I'm like, well, whatever kind we might have here, I'm like, but I'm not putting that horse on top, the firster, because I think you have 2 horses, the other 2 that I have, that my top pick, Warman Road, second career start, debuted when they first left Saratoga and went to Aqueduct. A good race, went to the sidelines after finishing 3rd at nearly 20-1. Gets Lasix as a 3-year-old. I'm guessing once again, I've talked about this before, and this is the hardest part of the game with really very limited coverage on track. Was this a Buck Shins thing? I mean, this was a good debut at almost 20-1. was it a calm thing that you only had one start as a juvenile? You're coming back now, but I love the debut, and I think we're gonna get better than 3-1 because of my other two horses you see on the screen. For a second, I'm not gonna, cut off my nose to spite my face that Brad Cox has an offspring of Liam's Map debuting. I mean, David Aragona is so good at his job, and sometimes I think this is very helpful. I don't think it gets enough attention. Andy Sterling will talk in real time on Talking Horses about some of these prices. And he might say it today. And David will text him and say, I heard workouts with this pair, everything. And that's very good. That's very nice. And that's very good where David gives you insight to his process. So, as I said, I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face. So I have Global Image for second. And I think, I think the price will be wrong for me. But Ride Up is, I think, handicapping the race. Seth and I, we've talked about it before to our audience. We look at races differently. Seth is like, I want to know who I think is going to win the race, and that's it. I think Ride Up is the horse to beat in here. I think he's going to be a bad price as a function of, I think there are 3 high-quality contenders. 2-3-7 in the opener.
And yes, I have Right Up on top.
Yes.
But I will say,
Yes.
Global Image, I looked up, and the siblings weren't precocious.
Right.
So I took a shot against Global Image. I put him down in the 3rd spot. Your pick, I put Warman Road, and I'm worried that one maybe sneaks out and just steals the race. I will say, you mentioned David Aragona. For folks who pull up the Daily Racing Form past performances with the closer look, David often does the closer look comments underneath, so you can get some of his thought process there a lot of days as well. Aqueduct second race, Stakebred Claimers going 6.
I know we didn't discuss it at the time. We may have discussed it after. But David took like a vacation or something, and our friend Craig Wilkowski did it, and we didn't even know it until after the fact. I was like, that's how good Craig was at it, that we didn't even know David was gone. And Craig did. I've talked about him because of Twitter, and I think he, the timing of the races, he sets the bar. 4-2-3, ladies and gentlemen, into the second race, and Victory Built. Interesting because on a quieter level, the real poster child for hot and cold might be Jeffrey Engelhardt. He seems
when
to
you
be,
started talking, that's the name that immediately came. Last winter, certainly.
He seems to be, on a quieter note, except for his last name, really a guy that will win like 3 to 5 races in a very short period of time, and then go the way of the dodo bird almost, and then he as a human recycle back and win a couple races and go away. So maybe he's the one. Second start since November, no chance when stumbling in the February 10th return to the races. And my thought is I have good early speed. Don't know if there'll be moisture in the racetrack. Good early speed, and I think we're going to use it to our advantage here. For second, Bronx Bomber, popular at the claim box, comes off of a strong victory most recently on Groundhog Day. And for third, number 3 for Jeffrey Engelhardt, first off the claim. 4-2-3.
Third race, we're looking at conditional claimers, $35,000 tags, non-winners of 3 lifetimes, 6.5 furlongs, the trip.
365, Joey Loose Lips gets my top pick for Rudy Rodriguez. And this horse has the good early speed that I like, and has decided after multiple tries in the New York bred non-winners of one other than to try the restricted claiming race. For second, the outside horse, Cousin Andrew, who seems to have been running for 20 years. 1 for 9 the last couple of years. First off the claim from Linda Rice. And for third, 2-1 on the morning line. Linda Rice's impressive winner off the most recent 2L, Naked and Famous with Jose Lascano, 365.
Fourth race this afternoon, Stakebred Filly Maiden Special Weight Runners going 6.
And just a quick note, because I wanted to put the horse in my mix, and I love him dearly. But boy, Mark Henning, 0 for 25 with firsters. And I always say this, it's not showing ineptitude to us. It's showing us it's not how he operates. He's clearly wants to get his horses on a slow process of improvement. But boy, if it wasn't for that, this is a $140,000 purchase. But Cherise, the 5, I'm going to look at to see if she can run 2 or 3 furlongs, and is part of the Mark Henning process of working horses into their best. I am 713. Dansur Dioro adds blinkers, gets Lasix today, had 2 races as a juvenile. Loved the debut. That was in the slop. For second, number 1, Shaman Princess. Debut at 22 to 1. Well, that price is gone. Now, that was the maiden claiming New York bred, the more expensive one, the 40. And for third, first-time starter. And I don't think of John Terranova as a firster guy, but Be Best, number 3, who is 2 to 1 on the morning line, an offspring of Hardspun. Another example where I'm hoping on Talking Horses there's some enlightenment.
I have printed up the PPs that have the closer look, and this is a David Aragona race. And to your point, he says, under Be Best, appears to be working well for her debut. Those last 2 drills match up with this barn's older allowance-type runner, 3 Jokers, who's in the 8th race today.
And there you have it. My suspicions have been confirmed. That's, like I said, I mean, there's, of the last 10, 15 years, and David, for what he does, David is probably one of the best hires in the industry. I grew up with Don LaPlace for all those years, and he set a great morning line. Then we had some rough waters for some time. And I've said this before, and this is from a guy who doesn't really, like the lower price horses. It's a truly invaluable job for the fan at a racetrack. I mean, a bad morning line actually helps me, but I think that's a bad idea. I mean, the morning line is a very important job, and David does a great one.
Particularly PP's coming out early now, and folks handicapping early. I remember when we were doing the morning handicapping show some years back, the weekday morning handicapping show. I was in with Gene one morning, and it was a Monday or Tuesday, so we were handicapping Lone Star, one of the Texas tracks. And I had a first
Is that 20 to 1 shot? You're like, what horse? Hey, he was off by a mile. What would he end up going off, like 8 to 5?
It was not 20 to 1.
They show you the past performances, like which one's wrong. He was the outside horse, right? He was like a number 7 or something. I go,
right.
Well, clearly the 7 is the wrong price.
Yikes.
So here's somebody who doesn't follow Lone Star, and we can pick out that's not the direction.
5th race at Aqueduct this afternoon. Optional claimer starter allowance, 1 mile the distance.
Very intriguing race here for me. As I mentioned, I like the card today. 3-6-2. The tough thing about this race for the horizontal players is this is like a 4 or 5, or even everybody in the field is live here. I mean, that has to be, a conundrum. Okay, let's say maybe Sounds Spooky, claimed out of the Pletcher barn. He's an outsider even for me. Well, the other 6, how you getting through this leg? I mean, good luck to you. I mean, I'm 3-6-2, as you can see up there. Thank you very much. John Service sends out this runner after winning for a tag, which is the conditions of running in this race. That had moisture in the racetrack, but I like the debut at 10 to 1, a very solid effort. Finished off the board, but was only beaten 2 lengths. For second, number 6, In Spite of Trainer. Linda Rice claimed his horse for $50K. Now, I've talked about this before. So, you claim in a maiden claim, there's no way the accounting tells you have to be rooting for the horse to lose. You need that condition. So Linda, thread the needle, as it were, claimed the horse at Churchill. It loses, and then she runs it for maiden claiming 75, and she gets the W, and then hits the board at this level, follow-up. And then for third, number 2, 3-6-2 in the 5th.
Here's one where I'm going to be interested to see when they go in the gate.
The prices?
You didn't use Mama's Gold. I don't use Mama's Gold. That 96 buyer, I'm sure, is why David Aragona put it. And I wonder, will the betting public buy into that? It is such an aberration.
I just show Seth, not that it matters my color coding. Brian Nadeau always made fun of it, but so it doesn't matter. But obviously, it doesn't make it doesn't matter. You can't see it, but it's just optics. It's like it doesn't belong anywhere. It's like such a anomaly. Isn't even the right word. It's like it's more than 30 points out of place. It's like my idea was.
And if it was the last race,
I just discarded.
If it was the last race, you might say, "Oh, the horse freaked and got good."
Yes,
but then came back to earth.
Yes, so I just was like, doesn't exist. Not paying attention. The only thing it's going to do is hurt the price of the people who like her.
But as I say, I'm interested to see where that one goes off when they go in the gate. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back, more Aqueduct, and a little bit later on, we'll shift our attention to Tampa on their big day. Stay tuned.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
This is a championship meet. All the best jockeys in the world are here, and I'm excited to ride against them. And you get to watch some really incredible, talented athletes out there.
To us, it's a place to be in the winter.
I love Gulfstream Park because of the racing.
The palm trees, the beach is right here. The horse racing is some of the best in the country.
Come on!
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Welcome back to the Handicappers Report on this Saturday morning. Seth, Merrow, and Anthony Mormino. Again, I'm going to look at Tampa a little bit later on, but we were in the midst of a Saturday Aqueduct card, and the sixth race is conditional claimers. And again, they'll go 6.5.
And the race probably goes through the one. I wasn't so sure that it goes through the 7 after 5, who is trying dirt, would run on a dirt track clear and fast for the first time in the career. But I do think Dr. Love, the race goes through. I have 3. 2-3-1, Brunate, my top pick for Jimmy Bond. Really just, I don't say this very often, but almost a stab. I mean, Jimmy Bond just works his horses conservatively. I was thinking maybe, we break through and we win at about $18 with Jose Lescano. Doesn't have buyer speed figures. That puts it on top, but a little bit of improvement and a little bit of regression. I'm only talking like a length and a half maybe for my top pick. I think we're in the mix. I have for second Jokemeister, Rob Atras. Now, I've said this before. I sent my picks in about high noon yesterday before Rob had 4. So I'm doomed there price-wise, and then Dr. Love for a third. So 2-3-1.
Seventh
I
race.
always laugh when that happens. I'm like, you got no chance.
When you have the bar graph and you're in the 24-hour period.
It was the wrong day. It was supposed to be today, Rob.
7th at Aqueduct this afternoon. Starter allowance 3/4 of a mile.
I love this race too. 3-4-1. Charlie Roode gets my top pick. 4. Michael McCarthy comes in after a synthetic try on Turfway Park. And by the way, because I do take shots at them when they're bad, but kudos to the Daily Racing Form, which is going to put in a new symbol for off the turf races onto synthetics, which is necessary.
Overdue.
For a second reigning chick, gets my second pick for Pat Reynolds. Scored a victory a couple races back in the 3L. And has been competitive at the starter allowance. And I've said before, I think there's a chasm between them. And then Captivating Kara for Rob Atras, 3-4-1.
Charlie Roode, interesting, but working down at Churchill. Churchill's
see how they
comes up for this again. Was in New York 2 starts back, then over at Turfway. 8th race this afternoon, the 1-turn mile for allowance non-winners of one other than. I wrote at the top of the page, this is a nice field.
Yes, it is. And I think this was a race where I thought the morning line favorites kind of had the race surrounded. I mean, there's a couple of them. I have 2 of the 7-2 shots. 7-1-2, Patient Capital gets my top pick. And if you were guessing by the name, was there a Klarovich, Chad Brown thing? There was. They put this horse in for a claim, and not that you'd be surprised, but was picked off by Mike Maker, who's doing great with the horse, no surprise. For second, from the rail, number 1, Celestial Moon, who wrapped up the 3-year-old campaign with a brilliant victory, first time dirt. And for third, my guy's never been a step beyond 7, is mostly a 6 furlong runner. Number 2, Majority Partner for Linda Rice, has outstanding buyers. Goes the mile today, though, 7-1-2.
Talk about the Mike Maker claim, and we talked about this horse before, but how about last week? Endorsed. Getting the stakes victory. And I mentioned when we talked about that horse, for some reason, a few months back, I think it was the summer of 2021, they claimed him for $100,000. And it wasn't until the last 2 or 3 starts that he got a win. So they waited a while, but they got a nice stakes win with the horse.
And I won't spend much time, but it was funny about that race, and we're talking about the Charger race, the Gulfstream Park Mile. And to me, Endorsed always looked like a winner, and Charge It never looked like a winner.
Yeah, you
to
could
me.
tell on the stretch.
Like, as I matured into racing, watching races, the name and the morning line odds, I've been able to get past it, and I was never like he's going to be Charge It and come back. And Endorsed was good because it wasn't like one of those ones like they took it to him. They were like, and he was the better horse.
Yeah, as I say, it took a while, but it's a clever claim. The feature race today at Aqueduct, the correction, $100,000 up for grabs for the ladies, going 6.
And this is a rarity in New York. I have a small list. It's not comprehensive, but there are very few stakes races in New York where there's been a $100 mutual winner. Very few. I mean, it's not surprising. There are very few $100 mutuals in the world, but the correction is in that small group. 3-1-5, Prodigy Doll gets my top pick, shipping in from Laurel, coming out of the Barbara Fritchie. But before that, a nice victory going 6. The Fritchie is 7. We're going 6. I thought this would be the outsider in the betting. I'll take Prodigy Doll for second. Number 1, the horse to beat, Rob Hatris. After his brilliant day today, sends out Rosa Veloci after being on quite a good run. Tries to add a stakes race for this New York bred. And Easy to Bless is my third pick in here. And, you got to go back to March, almost 50 weeks ago, a brilliant victory in the Extra Heat, who, by the way, passed away. Did you see that?
I did.
Now, what I said about this on Twitter, I said, let's be clear about Extra Heat. Her connections were so clueless, she debuted at a maiden claimer. So even they didn't know. You had a Hall of Famer and you didn't know it. How great is this game?
24 years old.
Yes.
Aqueduct's 10th and final today, state bred maiden claimer, 6.5 furlongs.
3-6-10, I'll just get out of here quickly. The one intrigued me, but not a first-time trainer. Didn't seem to stretch out, but I'm going to be watching Impulsive Spending to see a little giddy up today. But Helicopter Money, you see 3-6-10, is my top pick in the third start for Tom Morley, second one of the year. Now, this is a horse who's done, Tom is obviously a sharp guy. They tried maiden special weights, New York bred, then tried the 40, and now immediately he's going to the 25. For a second, first time in for a tag, Little Luca. The 6 for Kelly Breen, making the first start of the year. Second start since June. And then Central Love. I think Central Banker had a couple winners yesterday. Trying to think, I think definitely one, but I think 2. So 3-6-10 in the finale. What I think from a wagering standpoint, I don't think we're going to have any historical moments, but a very fun card coming on the heels of Manny Franco's 5-win day and Rob Atris' 4-win day.
All right, why don't we take one more break? We'll come
Yes.
back and shift to Tampa Bay Downs. Stay tuned.
The Clubhouse Racebook is the Capital Region's new home for racing and sports. 25,000 square feet of Vegas-style action with live wagering on the best horse racing from around the world. 260 flat-screen televisions and state-of-the-art wagering terminals. So don't miss out. The fun is only minutes away at 711 Central Avenue, Albany, just off exit 5 of I-90. And don't forget, if you can't make it to the Clubhouse, you can always wager online 24/7 at capitalotb.com.
This is a championship meet. All the best jockeys in the world are here, and I'm excited to ride against them. And you get to watch some really incredible, talented athletes out there.
To us, it's a place to be in the winter.
I love Gulfstream Park because of the racing.
The palm trees, the beach is right here. The horse racing is some of the best in the country.
A lot of good horses come out of here. And if you want to go to the next level, Gulfstream Park was the place to come.
I remember the first time I came to Gulfstream, it was like this big fairy tale place. All the history. And all these great horses, trainers, jockeys. It was everything that I ever dreamed of.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We turn our attention to Tampa Bay Downs, annually their big day, and I've said it many times before. I actually never focused on Tampa Bay, never even kind of knew it existed until Champagne for Ashley, for Howie Tesher, who recently passed away in 1990. Heck, they didn't have a turf course almost for another 10 years, so obviously they weren't thinking about it, but this is a good day. We're going to kick it off going 6. Claimers.
And another one put on the bucket list because I love Tampa Bay Downs.
Yes.
It's a, the facility isn't that big, but on a big day like this, there's a really nice buzz in the building. And
I love those small facilities.
Yeah.
Los Al, I think they're great.
And obviously, if you're down there, you're enjoying the nice weather. You're in shirt sleeves and shorts typically. So for the opener, I have it 5, 12, 4, and 11. I'll put Awesome Enough on top. Gets a little bit of class relief, has a little bit of early punch. I mean, it's typically up in the mix, not leading necessarily, but will be prominent throughout, I would think. And again, with that little dose of class relief off the last couple of starts, I think gets right in the thick of things today. Abe, honestly, stuck outside, but has the whole backstretch to kind of make up some ground. Kathleen O'Connell, who is... I'm not sure. I haven't read whether she had the breakthrough to become the winningest female trainer.
I thought she did.
Did she? I didn't see that. I know
it's been
2 weeks ago the countdown
flooding
was...
with the Twitter, but I thought I saw the one where she finally, I think.
It wouldn't surprise me because she was very close about 2 weeks ago. But has this horse, I think, in good form off the latest. And then Tap First, Gerald Bennett and Sammy Camacho, obviously, and Avil Racing. So it's really owner, trainer, jockey down there at Tampa, very potent. And I have to check the leaderboard. Speaking of that, see if Rich Avil, I would expect he's probably out at the NHC himself. He usually sits with the Matisse brothers out there. So for me in the opener, 5, 12, 4, and 11.
Obviously a power table, but bad job on my part. 20th anniversary of AP Andy paying over $100 winning the correction 20 years ago. I think them and Finger Lakes and Fairgrounds, the only ones who run a mile, 40 yards, maiden special weights, race 2.
6, 7, 2, and 5. There are a couple of Pletcher runners in here. I have them on top and third. Prove Worthy on top by Curlin. A little bit of breeding, certainly, and the potent connections, and put in a decent little debut that I would think provided some education to move forward from. It's Mike Rapoli and company here. I'll tilt towards Prove Worthy, but ringside, obviously, another Curlin offspring going out for, again, potent owner connections and Todd Pletcher training, and ran very well in debut. So this one also completely eligible to get things done. But those two bookend Perform, the Shug horse, who had the seasonal debut over at Gulfstream last time, showed a little oomph early before fading late, but I think benefits from that and probably moves forward this afternoon and picks up Irad Ortiz, who will be on the west coast of Florida this afternoon. I have it 6, 7, 2, and 5.
On to the third, maiden special weights going 6.
10, 9, 8, and 6. 10 is Fast Fixer. We shall see. 30-1 on the morning line, went off at 13-1 in debut, and was a well-beaten 6. So I think whether we'll get 30, I don't know, but I think we're going to get some very generous odds. That was against maiden claimers. But
maybe we get 48.
The more the better.
Yes, absolutely.
By Buchero, who last year had 29 first-time starters, 6 winners, 7 seconds, 5 thirds. There's a sibling called Black Seal that was second in debut, then ran 8th, then won in the third start. But that 8th place finish, there was some traffic trouble there. So I thought the winner-only sibling on the bottom, Buchero on top, has some experience underneath. obviously with the first race, and so I'll take a little pop in here. All Our Money by Munnings, who's a win early type sire, almost lived up to that last time with a good second place finish. So of those that have run, I'm tilting a little bit in that direction. And King Miano by Kozan. Kozan is a sire I like quite a bit as producing win early runners, but looking up the siblings she's produced, they weren't necessarily win early, but it's Kathleen O'Connell. I think this horse ran well in debut and a kind of debut to build off of. So at 10-1, we'll put that one in the mix also. I think it is the kind of race where you can maybe play around a little bit. I'm just looking, but the morning line is 7-2 in here. No, All Our Money at 3-1. Then there's a 7-2 shot. So there's nobody even on the morning line that is taking a lot of action. So I think you can play around in the third. I have a 10, 9, 8, and 6.
Fourth race gets us to the turf. Fillies and Mares, entry level allowance, going a mile.
6, 8, 3, and 1. I'll put Texas Shuffle on top. Luis Saez, again, amongst some of the bigger jockeys over at Tampa this afternoon. Shug McGahee trainee. Ran last on New Year's Eve at Gulfstream as a decent little third place finish. I just thought looking at this particular field, Texas Shuffle might have an edge on this bunch. I've been working over at Payson Park and working fairly regularly, so we'll put that one on top. Not with a lot of confidence, but Saturday Night Girl comes in off a Tampa start as well for Tommy Proctor. And just kind of similarly, there was enough there to think this horse will be a matchup with this particular group, which I think overall is kind of a mediocre group that doesn't have any particular standouts. But Sweet Duchess also in the mix. This one going out for Kathleen O'Connell and has some pretty consistent and decent recent form at Tampa that you can kind of hang your hat on. So in the fourth for me, 6, 8, 3, and 1.
On to the fifth, a starter handicap going 7/8.
2, 6, 7, and 5. I'll put Sterling Silver on top. I'm going to be interested to see, and I suppose the 4-1's about right, given a couple of the other horses in here, perhaps. But when I originally went through the race, I put a bunch of question marks next to the 4-1, and I wondered, will we get that? That seems generous for a horse that I think has some talent, but there's some other horses in here that may take some action as well. I'll be happy to get the 4-1. Luis Saez on board for Tommy Albatrani. Last seen being fairly well beaten in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, but there are some races underneath that are pretty good. And this is a bona fide stakes level performer and comes back in the seasonal 4-year-old debut in this nice little handicap, and it is a nice race. Olivia Darling comes in off a string of a couple of starts here at Tampa, a nice win 2 back, second in a stakes race last time. And again, it's 6-1. This one looks generous to me as well. Past the Champagne is the 3-1 favorite. I kind of get it. Comes out of the Barbara Fritchie last time, ran 4th for George Weaver. Irod Ortiz on board. 2 starts back at Tampa, however, ran 2nd in a stakes race behind Tap Dance Fever, who's also in today's race. So I'm going to be interested to see how it all shakes out odds-wise. I think my top 2 seem a little bit generous on the morning line, but we'll take it if we get it. In the 5th at Tampa, 2, 6, 7, and 5.
On to the 6th race, 3-year-old fillies, maiden special weights, going 6.
9, 7, 3, and 4. I'm going to put Kaylee's Fantasy on top. Twirling Candy, another sire, good sire of debut runners. Last year, 74 debut runners, 9 winners, 10 seconds, 8 thirds. Sibling called Kaylee's Sister won its career debut. So some win early top and bottom. Trainer, not necessarily known for that, but there's a steady string of workouts. There's a little bit of breeding. There's a decent price, and I didn't think anything else necessarily stood out. So Kaylee's Fantasy on top. Broken Hearts Bay. Of those that have run, I think this horse consistently is tossing out the kind of races that probably give this one the edge, again, amongst those that have a little bit of experience. Ms. Buchero in the 3rd spot. I mentioned Buchero earlier as a win early type sire. Dam has produced a couple of win early siblings. Red Crescent was 6th and then won in the 2nd start. My Main Man 3rd, then a couple of wins. So I thought there was, again, win early top and bottom here to go with. Abby's Plaid, gun runner on top. So the connections made me shy away a little bit. But 15-1 on the morning line, this may be one where you box them up if you're getting the right prices. Because I think, again, with Gun Runner on top, that one may be worth a look. And a race that it's going to be intriguing to see how it all does shake out. Will it be the Firsters? Will the Firsters not be as good as I might be anticipating? Because of those that have run, there are clearly no world beaters in here. 6th race at Tampa, 9, 7, 3, and 4.
Race 7 gets us stakes action. 3-year-olds going a mile on the turf in the Columbia.
10, 7, 9, and 2. Talk of the Nation on top. It's a Shug trainee that has a couple of wins, bookending a 6th place finish. That 6th place finish just looks like a complete aberration. But more importantly, the win last time was on the move over to Tampa and the turf debut. And it was not just a nice win, it was a lifetime best buyer, and it was a standout. It was clearly the best race of the career. So I think they found their home here. The question mark is going to be, will this horse be able to get a trip from the outside post position going a mile on turf? Sammy Camacho on board. We'll hope we do get a trip, because I think this horse, off of that last race, probably does have a real eligibility to run well in here in the stakes debut. Worthington in the 2nd spot for me. You have a horse that has some potential as a 2-year-old, early in the 3-year-old season. You take your shot on dirt. They did it in the Sam F. Davis. Now, experiment over. They're back on the turf today, and it clearly seems like this horse is much better on the turf. So we'll look for a rebound for Worthington. And Mo Stash, again, I'm kind of stuck on the outside with mine here, which doesn't thrill me. But Mo Stash in the 4 starts as a 2-year-old seemed to show a little bit of promise. Now comes back, and I say it a lot of times, you get a lightly raced 2-year-old, gets a little time off, comes back as a 3-year-old. Sometimes they can come back improved. If that's the case, I think Mo Stash becomes very, very intriguing. Now, again, mine are kind of all stuck towards the outside. If you're looking more towards the inside, I think Sendero for Todd Fletcher offers a little bit of an opportunity at perhaps a price as well. In the 7th, the Columbia, 10, 7, 9, and 2.
8th race on the dirt, 4-year-olds and up, going a mile and 16th in the Challenger.
I'm going to kind of keep my fingers crossed that maybe Classic Causeway can build on his previous good form at Tampa and maybe steal it on the front end. We shall see. Skippy Longstocking is going to take a lot of action. Skippy Longstocking is probably the one to beat, particularly if you go back to that Harlan's Holiday 2 starts back, where he was right there with the early pace. So even if Classic Causeway kind of gets out there in front, Skippy Longstocking may be able to kind of stalk and pounce. But again, Classic Causeway, 2 for 2 at Tampa. The Sam Davis and the Tampa Bay Derby last year, both were on or near the front end, and that seems to be his much preferred style. So I'll look for Classic Causeway to maybe pull off the theft in here over Skippy Longstocking, and then the Reds in the 3rd spot. I'm going to draw a line through the Hooper. If you look at that race as compared to most of the other races on the page, it just seems to look like a little bit of an aberration. I'm going to look for a bounce back today, and a bounce back to one of the better efforts by the Reds could put this one right in the mix at a decent price. So Tampa's 8th, the Challenger, 4, 2, 6, and 1.
On to the 9th, Phillies and Maris going a mile and an 8th in the Grade 2 Hillsborough.
6, 3, 5, and 4. Shantasara, one of a few in here for Chad Brown, but I'll tilt towards this one, who ran a pretty good second in the Pegasus Philly and Mayor Turf. Jenny Wiley last year, the QE Cup last year, were triple-digit buyer performances. That Pegasus run was a near triple-digit buyer. So off of that effort, second start of the season for Chad Brown, I'll look for Shantasara to be the best of the Chads in here. I'll put a Brendan Walsh horse underneath, Temple City Terror. I think the Chads are all very dangerous. Rogier on the inside, California Queen, but I'm going to go in another direction with Temple City Terror, who comes off a win to end last season in the Long Island. So, you're always a little bit curious, how do they come back? But you look at the workouts underneath, I think she's on her toes and will be ready to roll in the 7-year-old seasonal debut. And if so, Temple City Terror is clearly a fit. And then I'm going to put the Cherie Duval runner, Gam's Mission, in the third spot. This one comes back off quite a long layoff. Won the Mint Julep in June at Churchill. Hasn't been seen since. But another one, you look at the workouts at Palm Meadows, particularly that last one, the minute 3 workout, seems to indicate she also likely to be on her toes in return. And again, if she is, becomes dangerous. Rozier I have down in the 4th spot. I may regret that. I could see Rozier bettering my rating. But for me, in the Tampa 9th, the Hillsborough, 6-3, 5-4.
And staying on the turf, time for 3-year-old fillies to go a mile 16th in the Florida Oaks.
10, 3, 5, and 12. I'll put Free Look on top. Again, it's Chad, it's Klarovich. 3 starts last year, showed some promise. Ran twice up at Saratoga, 3rd, then broke the maiden. Then ran a good 2nd in the Miss Grillo, and then ran 5th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly Turf. The one thing that bugs me is the last 3 starts, you look at the trouble lines, bumped. When they start to put 2 together, but certainly 3, I start to feel like maybe this horse is just kind of finding trouble. We'll see more about that today in the 3-year-old debut. But again, up what we saw last year, a little bit of a break. Certainly the Chad horses can come back improved in situations like that. I'll put Free Look on top. Alpha Bella in the 2nd spot, Todd Pletcher runner. Took 4 starts to break the maiden. Seemed to do it on a nice improving series of buyers, and then stepped right out of the maiden to run a good 2nd in a stakes race subsequently behind Cairo Consort, who kind of freaked that day, but Alpha Bella was a good close-up 2nd. And then Dreaming of Snow, Gerald Bennett, this is the hometown hero. You have Chad Brown on top, Todd Pletcher for me in the 2nd spot, Gerald Bennett, Sammy Camacho, and a horse that's been based at Tampa this season for very, very potent connections. Question mark here is they tried the turf, but I'll trust them to be maybe making a little bit of a clever move in here. And if you get a price, this could be one to play around with. In the 10th, I have a 10, 3, 5, and 12.
And the feature race of the meet, 3-year-olds going a mile 16th in the Tampa Bay Derby.
I hate to post, but I'm going to take a little shot in here against the big favorite. 12, 6, 9, and 2. Tapit Trice is clearly going to be the one to beat. But Trice, 2 turns for the first time. 3-mile races so far, 2 at Aqueduct and 1 at Gulfstream. So 2 turns. Tampa can be a quirky surface. We'll see. Todd Pletcher tends to bring these horses over to Tampa and do very well, though. So, yes, Tapit Trice, the horse to beat, the $1.3 million purchase, who has seemingly lived up to that nicely in the first 3 starts. I'm going to go to Prairie Hawk, though. Had a little trouble last time in the Sam Davis. I thought the horse was interesting in there, and that just looks like one you can draw a line through. The 2 races just before that seem to indicate this is a horse with some legitimate talent for Saffie Joseph. Sammy Camacho back on board again today. Again, I hate the post, and that may work well against me, and I may regret the situation and the call here. But at a big price, I'll take anticipated big price. I'll take a shot with number 12, Prairie Hawk, over Tapit Trice, and then Shesterkin in the 3rd spot, going out for Todd Pletcher.
Good job.
Big debut. I practiced this morning.
Okay. Ranger goalie.
Big debut effort, and then came back with a 2nd in the 2nd start of the career behind Tapit Trice. So it's going to be interesting to see what both of these guys do this afternoon for Pletcher. As I say, Tapit Trice may move right up the Derby ladder to sit behind Forte with a win this afternoon. Going to be an interesting edition of the Tampa Bay Derby, though. But I'll take a little flyer in here. 12, 6, 9, and 2.
Well, I'll tell you, as so Charger was, boy, as good as Forte was.
Yeah, he clearly stepped right to the head of the class, and which is fun to see. Because nobody had really stepped up yet, but to see the 2-year-old champion come back and kind of put the exclamation.
And wrapping it up at 5:45, 3-year-olds, maiden special weights, fillies going a mile on the turf.
5, 4, 2, and 9. Galileo's Jewel on top goes out for Tony Dutroff. A couple of starts that I thought they were okay, and a couple of starts to build on. Justifiable Bell moves out of the Todd Pletcher barn into the Owen Hardy barn. Off a January try at Gulfstream that I think, again, like the top pick, there's enough there to think the experience is kind of moving forward, and volatility in the 3rd spot off 3 starts. That, again, like the top 2, there was enough there Chad and Klarovich have a firster. Normally, I'm pulled in that direction. I put it down in the 4th spot. If that one beats me, I'll kind of kick myself because normally I do tilt there. And again, the horses that have run aren't any superstars, but I will go in the 12th and final, 5, 4, 2, and 9.
All right, quickly, before we get to Ren Carruthers and Racing Across America, did you or will you vote for Arrogate for the Hall of Fame?
I have not.
He is for Seth Merrow, and I think much of those of us that have a vote, he is the North Star. He is the tipping point for the almost entire argument about a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
For the record, I did.
I have not
with no hesitation
sat down with the ballot yet.
I would bet I was the first one returned.
I usually wait. I don't know why.
Well, wait for the resume to improve?
Well, a few years ago there was the Asmussen situation. So, but yeah, I have to sit down. I will say we had the whole Ghost Zapper conversation years ago.
Well, this one takes it even farther.
And I have had to reevaluate it given the 21st century.
And the fact, and this is what I go by, and you know, the thing with Ghost Zapper was easy for me. Why? Because he's the best horse spectacular bid. He can't not be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, and now Arrogate, I mean, it's the 4 races. I mean, that's he was an allowance winner only before he came to the Travers. So it's a question of the Travers, the Breeders' Cup, the Pegasus, and the Dubai World Cup, and you know, that's it. But I thought it would be interesting for a person, and I don't think you're alone. I think there are many, but I mean, to me,
I will say the nominees are spectacular this year.
Yes. We have more time. I want to talk about one of the nominees who I voted for, but we don't have that time today because Ren has a tight schedule at Tampa Bay. Seth has Racing Across America coming up, and who else along with Ren?
Kevin Kirstein from Churchill Downs to talk Derby and Oaks future.
All right, so hopefully the drive home will be even better than the drive in this morning. He stays, I go. Enjoy the great racing from around the country, but particularly, hopefully, from bright, sunny Tampa Bay Downs.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital